Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. Welcome back to the VO Weekly. My name is Kevin Kloim. I'm the founder of Tech Ranch, and in the Venture Outfitter Weekly, we've been discussing a set of issues that we want to dig into a little bit more. Today is going to be about investing tomorrow, empowering renewable energy, and really kind of looking at some of the bringing together some of the frames about what we've been talking about. I have one of my colleagues and friends that's going to be speaking to us from his base of experience later today or in today's program. He's a solar engineer pioneer. His name is Kimo Storke or Storky. Sometimes he goes by Jim, but I call him Kimo. So we'll tell you a little bit more about him in just a second. But part of what I want to do is remind you part of the framing that we've been looking over. There, there's a number of different disruptions that are happening in the world. This is the slide that I used previously when I was talking about what's happening with the disruptions in the world. There's a number of different technologies, political strife, other issues that are happening. And part of what we want to focus in on is how is it that we can leverage these disruptions and create something for the greater good? There's a lot of money that gets made and stuff like that anytime there's these level of disruptions. But the problem is that those of us that are the pioneers that want to build a better world, not just make money doing it, that's what we're really here to discuss. Now, part of what I mentioned last week, and if you followed what I've been talking about, I'm a big fan of Tony Seba. Tony Seba has been talking about the five industrial disruptions, and he's in some of the book series that he's been talking about. This quote that I found, I think, really frames it in. He says, "We are on the cusp of the fastest, deepest, most consequential transformation of human civilization in history." A transformation every bit as significant as the moving from foraging to cities and agriculture 10,000 years ago. Now, part of what we want to do is in this whole idea about this program, the venture outfitter, the work, the reason that I started Tech Ranch in the first place is to kind of understand how do we actually pick up these activities and shape them so that we can figure out the best ways of taking advantage of the situation that's happening. I noticed that it looks like our speaker has had some difficulty on connecting in. I'll ask my team to reach out to him again. I don't see him in I think he's been bouncing in and out of the studio audience. But hey, Kimo, as soon as you can, come on to screen so I know that you're available, and I'll go ahead and do an introduction. But the main thing about today is today's program about investing in tomorrow, empowering renewable energy. We're going to be hearing from Kimo, who has 32 years of professional experience, including 26 of that in business development and 6 years in the U.S. military. He co-founded ElectriFi.company, a fintech company focused on financial solutions to the renewable energy sector. As the CEO, excuse my voice. I am getting over a cold, and I appreciate your tolerance of my voice right now. As the CEO of Cast Consulting, Kimo oversaw business development projects of more than 530 megawatts of energy and a value of more than 900 million of financial value. And he's represented various energy funds covering all stages of the capital for renewable energy projects. His contributions span community solar, utility scale projects, and storage and photovoltaic systems. He's also a seasoned moderator and speaker at major renewable energy conferences. I'm sure you've seen, if you've seen some of his work, you can definitely hear more about it. But he held significant roles at IBM and RSM Magdadri, generating substantial revenue. Was in the military, Blackhawks. He's also a friend and a colleague here, based here in Austin, Texas. Real excited to have him here. Kimo, go ahead, turn on video and join us, and we'd like to hear from you.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you inviting me to do this. And so thank you, everybody, for joining as well. I'll just kind of thank you for the kind introduction as well, Kevin. So I will say to you from continuing on the introduction side, it's been quite the journey for me to do what I've done, which is to bring photovoltaic, solar, and other renewable energy solutions to the market, and to actually bring them on and through Wall Street. Is it a pleasure to work with what I call the pioneers and or the people in the industry that are really the unsung heroes. And those unsung heroes, ladies and gentlemen, are called the developers, right? So if you're in the industry, you know who they are. If you're not in the industry, they're really the same thing as a real estate investor. They're the people that go out there and they provide they get the upfront money if they can, and they do all of the hard work in the beginning. And so you can liken that a developer to a real estate developer that's doing perhaps a neighborhood or a building, right? They have to put in all the horizontal infrastructure first before they get the real big money to do the vertical infrastructure. And so these people, we call them the installers. They're out there putting in solar, and this is more on the residential side. They're putting on, solar one rooftop at a time, all the way across the country, all the way across the world. That is one category of the subsector of renewables. The other three, other two renewable categories are utility, commercial, and industrial. And the movement of renewables is happening all over the world, as we see here, if you are following that. And so, what I do basically is I'm really kind of almost, you could call me a broker between the big money and the big projects, or the big aggregation projects. So my company, ElectriFi, who I'm a founder of, we are currently turning on aggregating, financing large portfolios of solar projects across the United States.
You want me to go ahead and I'll bring up that slide, by the way, if you'd like.
Pop it up.
So this is ElectriFi. This is your company?
Yeah, that's my company. I have a C-suite of a very accomplished gentleman, and we have been at it now for a couple of years. And I've been at this. My own company, Cast Consulting, has been at this for 15, 17 years, and I've been on my own and doing fairly well. But a couple of years ago, my CEO, Thanasis Antro, he approached me and said, Kimo, we should really institutionalize this and really go after the big money. And so that's what we've been doing for the past couple of years. So go to the next slide, please. So this again talks about, against the residential sector. And I'm not going to, auger in on it too much, because I think there are bigger picture things that I think that everybody's going to want to know about renewables. But suffice it to say that if you see the value found in U.S. residential solar right now, you could see that we have, unfortunately, an increase every single year of prices of electricity in all jurisdictions, in all places. That is not going to stop, right? And so, the consumer and or businesses will continue to have rising costs related to their power. And so what we see here, though, from the other side of that, is that it creates an incredible value for people who are in the industry like me, to provide sustainability, security, reliability, and cost savings for them.
Interesting stuff. Definitely. So and you mentioned when we were talking before, this isn't residential. There's I think you mentioned three major areas of solar development. Can you kind of give us a feel for how this is different from the other two areas?
Sure. So, I mean, again, residential simply is, installing a solar system with a battery. It may be an intelligent control panel on somebody's house, right? And then the second sector is commercial and industrial. And commercial and industrial can be, any commercial building, could be a hotel, could be a manufacturing facility, could be whatever is bigger than a house, that also needs this type of power. And that, ladies and gentlemen, it really is actually what I would call the new frontier. it's an old frontier, but it's a new frontier because of the nuances of standing that up. It's difficult to work in the commercial and industrial area because you don't have a lot of the a lot of the companies are private, right? So you don't have access to balance sheets. You don't know what their credit is unless they're publicly traded companies. So everybody really in that sector wants to go after the Googles or the Microsofts of the world because they can figure out what they are, where they're at, publicly. But it's the smaller companies, the Fortune 1000s, that those are the ones that the United States is made up and the world is made up of, in fact. And it's those companies that need this kind of renewable energy solution, which really is a stack of technologies. So you've got solar, you've got storage, you might have some wind, and then ultimately you might have, and it's going to be the next future of all of this. And it may relate to some of your folks' companies that are listening here, called a virtual private network, right? Or VPN. I'm not sorry, VPN. VPP, virtual power network, that is made up of multitudes of these CNI customers and or residential customers, and they all come together and they all then say to the utility, hey, we've got 50 megawatts worth of storage because we have all these batteries, and we're going to sell that back to the grid, right? In one group, not just the individuals' homes or the businesses. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the future, right? It is the microgrid of the future that will be enabled by software. It'll be enabled by, the technology that's coming out from people like Tesla and or others. It's really kind of the advent of the inverter, right? The inverter is the brain in a battery, and the batteries, and it tells everybody else, hey, I got this much power. I want to give part of this to the utility. And then if you think about that, there's thousands of other people that say the same thing. Hey, I got this much power. I want to give this power to the utility. And it's the software that will enable that to happen. So this is called a VPP.
No,
So
it makes a lot of sense, especially over the last 2 days here in Texas, right? Peter Zeinhan, on a briefing he just posted earlier this day, said that, on the 29th of April, just a couple of days ago, that here in Texas, the ERCOT had announced that electric demand was down, and our electric capacity was being overridden. And I'm not an expert at that, but it sounds like that this, especially for those of us that are, with our own homes, we need this more than ever before.
Yeah, we do. So again, that's CNI, and then the last one is utility scale, and that's the big projects that are, we see kind of the big news on them. They're in the desert somewhere, and they 100, 200, 300 megawatts, right? And those are power plants that will connect to the grid and provide it on a wholesale level. So the power comes from those utility scale projects. They're connected through a utility, TXU or whatever, and then that power is sold then to us as retailers. There's that middle ground here that the VPP can operate in, where all of us as suppliers of power ultimately can actually, ironically, make a little money.
When it sounds like that's, I can go back to your slides. It sounds like that's exactly what you guys are doing. Is that correct?
Well, it's VPPs will come online here it's going to be a couple of years for them to happen. What is happening now, ladies and gentlemen, is the selling of solar as a lease or power purchase agreement from an installer to a homeowner, right? And the value proposition to the homeowner is that in certain jurisdictions you can save a lot of money, like 20%, 30% a month, right? Especially in California, in Hawaii, places where power is constrained. Some of the places, actually, even in places like Dallas, where you see that the demand charges for your power is 22, 23 cents a kilowatt hour versus a normal 7-cent kilowatt hour, when it's not blasting hot. So you've got these value propositions that are all around the country by different people who need power. And so our proposition is to sell or to provide the income, the financing for those projects to the installer, then to the consumer.
What's been critical during like what have you since you're obviously a solar pioneer and you're one of the people who are ushering in all these different changes, what have you have to over what has your company, what have you had to overcome as an entrepreneur to make this sort of stuff possible?
That is a very good question as to the what have I had to overcome and what is really the why, right? The
Yeah.
why is I saw the ability to help with climate change, one house at a time. And when I was kind of going through this sojourn of what I was going to do as an entrepreneur, I could either be, if we think about a wheel, right? The outside of the wheel is spinning all the time, and that's technology. So you got to stay on top of it, right? You've got to modify with it, you've got to mold with it, you've got to do all of that stuff, and that is just spinning all the time. The hub of the wheel is money, and I decided that I'm going to stay on the money side of things. And so breaking into the industry for me was because I was from IBM, right? And I was trying to figure out how do I get in here. And this is one thing I will say to anybody here on the call is go find an association that is doing what you have a vision for and just go there and mop the floor. Just be there, right? And that's what happened to me. I was part of the green tech group over at the Chamber of Commerce in Austin. I got invited to be part of Brewster McCracken's action group. He was running for mayor back in 2010, and his action group was to unite CPS Energy and Austin Energy. And I got invited to just be kind of part of the think tank there. And we met in New Braunfels at the Chamber of Commerce. Rusty Brockman was at that time the kind of the leader of the chamber, the business development component. And we were meeting, trying to figure out what green solutions were there. And I just participated in these groups, these think tanks of these wonderful entrepreneurs and business owners that were in Central Texas who believed in, renewable energy. Brewster didn't get elected, but you know what? So back to your point about challenges, I got asked to go to the Pearl Brewery and meet with Jiggershaw because Rusty couldn't go. And it was inconvenient for me to go there, and there was really kind of nothing in it for me, so to speak. But because I was in the military and because I believed in my passion and my vision for renewables, I went anyway. Right? So, I mean, 70% or more of it is just putting your stinking shoes on and going. Right? So I went. And when
Exactly.
I went, yeah, right. And I met Jiggershaw and I said, well, how much money do you need? And he said, I need $200 million. And I said, oh, okay. Well, guess what? I know the people from Texas Teachers Retirement Fund. And I put that together. Texas Teachers Retirement Fund introduced me to First Reserve Corporation, which is a $24 billion fund out of Greenwich, Connecticut. And Mark Florian, who is now the managing director of BlackRock, who is my mentor, said, oh, I'm brand new and I have $1.5 billion to spend. And there it was. So the challenge is believing yourself and then believing your passion, and then, working towards it by sticking your big toe or whatever you can into whatever association that you can get into to, prove yourself that you can walk, talk, and chew gum. Really.
When so in doing something like that, and that truly describes since we celebrate pioneers in the venture outfitter and tech ranch, right? That's truly a pioneering effort. How do you sustain yourself during such pioneering efforts? I mean, I get it, like, put the shoes on, get out there, get ready to get on the field, be a little bit knocked around, and but how'd you sustain yourself during that time?
I really, ladies and gentlemen, I wish I could say that I had some big angel investor that gave me a couple $1 million, but you know what I did? I worked on consulting gigs and business development gigs because that's what I am. I'm a biz dev guy, and I did small deals for like 3 or 4 years, right? And, I survived off of 50, 60, $70,000 a year for quite a many years. And then, that magic happened with that big deal with First Reserve and Sun Edison. And that put me on the map, right?
That was the $900 million deal that you mentioned in the that we mentioned in the show notes, right? Is that that was
Yeah,
the first largest solar deal out there?
yeah. In that point in time, 2011 through 2013, that was the largest deal that was done. And again, I just I did it by myself. So do not be afraid of what you don't know, right? And I wish I could be so. I mean, I'm going to be a little crass and say, fake it till you make it,
Yeah, I
right?
know it makes sense. It makes sense. So, so for given that the disruption is happening, and obviously this is growing, and in you mentioned in the three different fields of the solar world, right? You're focused squarely on residential and creating the situation that allows these power, virtual power groups, to come together and things like that. Are there opportunities for other pioneers to step in to bring different tools and techniques and solutions into that? And if so, how?
That yes, there absolutely is. So if you think about kind of the matrix here of what is needed to pull off what I'm doing, you have to have the right kind of software. And in my industry, in the tech industry, you could point to, Oracle or, all these other companies who have ERP systems, right? And you just go buy this massive tool and you use it for enterprise, resource management and whatever. That kind of tool does not exist in the renewable energy industry. There are all these really great innovators that have bits and pieces of the tool. And so the opportunity there is for so we'll start with origination. Origination is sales, right? So you've got some tools by people like Salesforce and others, and then you've got after origination, then you've got right the onboarding of the projects, and then you have these tools that are pretty good in the industry that do what is called production values, and so they look at the irradiation of your house and how it works, and then there are these other tools that are more closer to what I would call the ERP tools, and there's some of those too, but there's on the fray there's really these fringe things like AI that can do some amazing things. And so, for instance, using AI for commercial and industrial, right, on an origination perspective, using that for marketing, because you want to know exactly what Procter and Gamble has done over the past year in every one of their jurisdictions. And how long would that take an analyst to go pull all that data together? How long would
Right.
that take I to pull that data together? Now, AI is not going to replace, a seasoned salesperson to go knock on the door of the CFO. But if I'm armed with the information about whatever I need to have about Procter and Gamble and their ESG, incidentally, ladies and gentlemen, is environmental social governance. This is a mandate by the U.S. Government for Fortune 100 publicly traded companies to be on the shtick when it comes to environment, social governance, and they better have a plan, and they better be executing on that plan. Over the past couple of years, that's been what I call greenwashing, where they'll say, "Oh yeah, I've got a plan." Oh, really? Tell me what that plan is, and how are you going to execute it, and how are you going to reduce your electric bill by 15% all the way across your thousands of locations? And it's crickets. Well, now it's coming true. So part of this, from a technology perspective for others, back to what I was saying, is there's the ability to have these software products that help with operations, help with sales, help with analytics, and help with marketing. And
Uh,
ironically, it's the marketing side of things that really can use some big help.
cool. We're starting to get a handful of questions, and that I'd like to switch over to. I don't know if I know on your slides you had one more slide that I think you've already spoken to, but before we switch into the questions, just want to make sure that did you want to say anything more about the ElectriFi team specifically?
You know, I appreciate it. I've been around the block with this. I got a great team. if anybody wants to contact me privately, we can certainly talk about it. I've got 20-year veterans, and because I've been in the industry for 15, 17 years, I got some extremely stout guys that are behind me, a lot smarter than me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you for joining us today. Part of what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take a couple of questions, and I'll do my best to deal with my crazy voice here. First question coming in from one of the streaming sites. What are the major barriers that could hinder the growth of renewable energy, and how might the industry overcome them in the coming years?
Yeah, so the major barriers right now are on some of them are on the financing side. So the interest rate issue has certainly increased the cost of money, and so that makes then the return on investment, both for the investors on Wall Street and for everybody all the way on down the line, a bit challenging. We think that will obviously level out at some point in time, and we'll get back to normal business. That's one of the challenges. The other challenge is really kind of what we do at ElectriFi is we work with the regionals, right? So every single state, every single city has its own nuances on how you do solar, right? It's same thing with utility scale, same thing with C&I, and same thing with residential. So you have to have these developers. Again, these are the people that put the infrastructure in. They know how to deal with the utilities. They know how to deal with the interconnection agreements, with the land, with the any of the environmental issues that come to it. Those guys are the champions, right? They're the ones out there on every day, taking it in the chin, putting their 401k on the line, try to get to the point where they can get the big money. That's another challenge. And then the third challenge really is about, unfortunately, it's with the utilities, right? So we're seeing it right now in California. The PUC and the powers that be that are lobby with politicians, they're trying to put a squash on distributed generation, right? So DG is exactly so. DG, by definition, ladies and gentlemen, is what you put power on a house and you don't sell it back to the utility. That's DG, distributed generation. We call it behind the fence, right? So you're installing something at a Samsung facility, and it's behind the fence. Samsung puts it up, well, we put it up, and Samsung consumes it all, and you don't sell it back to anybody. That is the future. That in and of itself is a challenge.
Another question came in from Rob. It says, is there a demand response opportunity for a virtual power group?
Yeah, that's right, Rob. There is. Absolutely. So the VPPs, there is a demand response opportunity there. And again, the barrier to entry on VPPs is having enough storage, really. So until we get to the point where we have, thousands and thousands of households, we cannot actually do VPPs, because the utility comes to you and says, hey, I don't want 500 houses. I want 2,000, right? And so if they have 2,000, then you can do a good demand response with it. But before that, we're still, testing these things. There's VPPs being launched by Tesla in California and a few other jurisdictions, but they're relatively small and they're still in the pilot stage.
Let's see, we got a couple other questions. This one has a bunch of abbreviations that I do not know. How do you see the future of VAWT, wind energy harvesting, with respect to HAWT and solar? Sorry that I don't know your abbreviations for the industry. Do you how do you see
I don't
those?
know those. I don't know those abbreviations either. If whoever said that can explain a little bit more.
Okay, it looks like, and looking on to my other monitor over here, Cedric, if you can give us a couple of other details about what you're requesting, so that we can actually get that would be great. And we'll come back to it. We'll go to the next question. What are some of the key lessons you've learned through your experiences in the solar industry?
Well, we call the solar industry the solar coaster because it's up and down and up and down, right? And so you just have to have patience and you have to have good partners, right? And you have to have persistence. It's one of the things that I've learned. Actually, I call it the 7 Ps, right? It's my own kind of like a reminder of marching orders that I have, but it relates to business, right? It's persistence, passion, partners, prayer, play, right? And pain. If you look at those things every single day and you kind of imbue them onto your partners, then you kind of can relate to them. And so if you do that, then you can kind of, in um, endear yourself to your partners, because you know what? Everybody's going through the roller coaster. Everybody needs the help that they can, and everybody needs to be able to do what I call um, living in the white space. Because all we do, right, ladies and gentlemen, is we live in the words. But if we stop and we look in the white space between the words, that's where life really is. And that's where we achieve our passions and our visions and our dreams with our friends.
Yeah, there is certainly like a certain type of patience that I hear you speaking of. And one of the things I appreciate you knowing as a friend as well is just when you said the word play, just knowing that you go out to Lake Travis and go windsurfing and take care of yourself, and to get through some of the rougher moments of this whole idea of being a pioneering entrepreneur. There are lots of entrepreneurs that build all sorts of different businesses, right? But there's something distinctive on having to get through the quote unquote white space, or like you're saying, the solar coaster, the roller coaster of an industry that's being built in an industry that's disrupting what's historically there. Other philosophical things you might say?
No, that's really it. I just try to keep it simple: life balance, good partners, trust until you can't trust anymore, and love as much as you can.
Yeah. So we now have the definitions of Cedric's asked on the LinkedIn stream. VAWT, vertical axis wind turbines, and then horizontal axis wind turbines. And
Oh,
his
right.
original question was, how do you see the future of those two technologies with respect to solar?
Yeah, that is a good question, Cedric, and thank you for those definitions. So both vertical axis and horizontal axis wind turbines are obviously new tech, right? And so for any new tech to cross a chasm related to, renewables or wind or solar or whatever, it has to be bankable, right? And it's like this with any other, industry that we're in. So the question is, how do you provide bankability? Well, you provide bankability by, having a company that fortunately or unfortunately, has a balance sheet, has pilot projects that are accomplished, and has some commercial adoption in the market. And so, while those turbines and other technologies I see all the time, the company has to be able to cross the chasm, which then means they have the money to get themselves to be bankable, so that someone that's going to provide the debt for 1,000 horizontal wind turbines for again, Procter Gamble or whomever, can do it. And so that takes unfortunately a lot of time and money, and using credible sources to validate your engineering is also very, very important. So like a Black & Veatch study that says, hey, you know what, this horizontal wind turbine is going to last for 20 years. Now, we don't know what it does, but our engineering says, by golly, it will. And so you've got this kind of like UL housekeeping good stamp of approval on your technology, because if the big money is going to put the money to it, that turbine is said it's going to have to last 20 years. So I better have a good stamp of approval that says it will by somebody.
Well, it's interesting. I think the question that's coming in from Cedric about that is he was trying to compare the vertical axis with the horizontal axis in solar. But I think what you're saying about, I'll more generally speak about it from the standpoint of technologies that have been, proven to be stable, to be long term. That's where the questions are, right? That, whether or not they've been figured out yet, and therefore are quote unquote bankable.
Yeah, so from a technology perspective, uh, Cedric, there's all kind of stuff out there that's incredibly efficient, right? But again, efficiency and it relating to then viability and market, presence is is a large hurdle. I mean, that's why they call it a chasm, you know. So it can be the best thing since sliced bread and provide incredible amounts of power and this multifaceted technology related to lasers and nanotechnology for solar panels. In the laboratory, it's incredibly efficient, right? We're talking about 35-40% efficiency, but you can't scale it. It costs millions and millions of dollars, and it's still, nascent technology that some big boy has to, get behind. And so if we look at Tesla as an example of this, Cedric, this is exactly what they have done, right? As much as whatever you think about, Elon, is what you do think, what I think about him is he has been on the tip of the spear, right? He has taken the electric car and look where it is now. Look where the electric battery is, right? Look at what they're doing with some of these integrated solar panels. They're taking it on the chin on their own balance sheet to move that stuff forward. And that's what it really takes.
Yeah, that is, that is part of the problem. They say when and that's what a lot of times when I use the word pioneers, right? The expression is the pioneers get all the arrows, the settlers make all the money. We have to figure out from a standpoint of being entrepreneurs that actually want to take care of ourselves long term about how to actually get through that valley of death, as it says. Let's switch to one well, actually it's a set of three questions from Rob. What is the biggest barrier for converting a homeowner to solar power? Second question, is it financing, sales, installation, return on investment? And then his third question, is there an opportunity for small business to play a role in any of these three areas?
I would start with the last question. When you say, is there an opportunity for a small business? I'm assuming you're just a small business and you're thinking about putting solar on your small business. Is that true?
I think you might be thinking about like if there was like a way of building a small business that somehow got involved to support it. Like as an example, you're getting the financing for these type of projects to these installers and things like that. Is there another in the value chain that's being created around the opportunity? Is there another place for entry for an entrepreneur and he said in a clarifying statement here, building a business around it?
So again, there are different ancillary businesses that you can build around it. But so let's go back to the kind of the unsung hero, right? That's the installer. So the installer is the person that then either has a homegrown sales force internally, or they outsource it to an origination company. And those are the guys that knock on the door. So I'm going to go back to your first question and then answer all of them right now. So the installer goes and he talks to the homeowner and he asks him, well, do you want to own it or do you want to lease it? Right. And so if you're going to own it, then you get the tax benefits of it, but you have to pay whatever the cost is, different costs around the United States. So typically a cost of a solar array that's for maybe a 2,000, 2 or 3 kilowatt project and maybe a couple of batteries is about $40,000. So the upfront cost is that. You can get it financed, but you get a tax write-off. But still, typically here, what I hear in Texas is that the IRR, the return on investment, or ROI, is 5, 6, 7 years, and a lot of people don't do it. But in certain places like California, so those of you who are in California and in Hawaii and or in other places where there are renewable energy credits, those are the places where you set up a small business that can do this, because the returns for the consumer, the profit for the installer, and the profit for me as an investor all work. So you want to be in jurisdiction where there's high power prices. So that's the first piece. The second piece is let's see, the opportunity for a small business. So I don't know what your small business is, but it's there have been, sadly enough, over the past year, because of what is called NEM 3 in California, 100 solar installers have gone bankrupt. It is really not the best time in the industry now because of interest rates and these policies that came forth from the PUC that are hindering installer growth. So are there opportunities? Yes, but you got to be in the right place and you got to have the right thing. Now, I would say there's sidebar opportunities like drones, right? So think about it. I'm an installer and I need to go look at a rooftop and I got to look at the trees around the neighborhood too. Well, guess what? There are drone companies that make not only, well, not the drone, but yes, but the software to be able to go look at that and then report that back to the installer and or me, the investor, because I want to know that that house, that solar is going to be producing what they say it's going to be producing over 20 years, right? So you may have a tree that's 3 years old, but you put the solar on, and in 5 years, I want to make sure that tree doesn't overshadow the house. So I can go back to the homeowner and say, hey, I am being proactive here. That oak tree needs to be trimmed, or else you're going to lose some of your production value. What I don't want to do is go back to a homeowner and have the homeowner say to me, hey, how come I don't have production value? Right? So you want to be proactive in all that you do related to that. Other ancillary businesses, there's distribution of product. There are other things from a kind of a household perspective that are happening, which are very interesting, like integrated control panels. Think about it. What is the control panel in your house? It's a circuit breaker panel, isn't it? Is it smart? No, it's not smart. It just pops when there's too much power. Well, there's a company out there called Span. Span is a company that is going places because they claim to be, and I think they are, the brain to the house. Now, the Tesla would have you say it's the inverter, but the inverter is only the brain of the battery. The brain of the house is a circuit breaker panel. So you've got all these different little businesses. So call them electrical contractors, right? You've got this business that's come up with this intelligent control panel and others that are going to electrify the home. And that's why my company is called ElectriFi, because we're thinking about all of the technology that we will use in the future.
That makes a lot of sense. It's interesting. And so the what I hear you saying and reflecting on Marab's question is anything that allows to lower the risk or lock in the as much as possible over the next 20 years of an investment, like making sure that the amount of radiation that's getting to the solar that's actually getting to the unit itself can be locked in, or anything that actually helps manage that whole process and lower the risk of the installed investment, right? That's what I hear through what you're saying. And like and then that value chain, which sounds like that there's a lot of stuff to still be built out since it's a new value chain, is that there's multiple different points of entry into that space.
Sure, right? Hardware, software, services, all of it, right? We're still, remember, ladies and gentlemen, we only have about 7% adoption in residential solar across the whole United States. So it is just a massive, massive market. And so, whatever you can think of. And, if any of you have questions, again, I've been an entrepreneur that's been whacked in the head a couple different times. And, hopefully I can help you not get whacked in the head if you're trying to walk down this road. Contact Kevin, contact me. I'm more than happy to talk.
Understood. I appreciate that. Let me wrap up with we'll take our last question. We have several questions that came in, but just in starting to, since we're getting to the end of the time that we have scheduled, and I really appreciate your background, your insight. RD asked the question, how do we actually so part of the Tech Ranch community is focused on all sorts of different what we call impact innovation, technology that solve human needs. And his question is the possibility of how do we help the bottom billions with something like this? What like how do we get energy to the non-served and underserved across the world, maybe even the US? I'm not sure where he's targeting his question, but what's your thought process about that?
Yeah, wonderful question. Awesome question. It's part of my legacy, actually, to help these kind of 501(c)(3)s that are out there that are, either feeding, third world countries or providing, whatever services they have. And there are companies out there that are providing one light bulb and one solar panel to, African families and or Amazonian families, because guess what? If you don't have light or the ability to have light, then you have to go find it, right? And then you have to go cut down a tree. And then you have to go into the Amazon forest. And then you get, your women that are doing that, they get, unfortunately injured or kidnapped. I mean, it's just horrible situations down there just by a simple thing of having a light bulb. And so there are organizations out there that will provide just a light bulb and a little solar panel. And so you're helping, the millions and the billions there. In the United States, we just came out with a program by the Biden administration. It's a low-income solar grant program, $8.2 billion. It just got launched last week. And so now low-income families can actually go and get solar on their homes. And in general, folks, there's another component there that you have the ability to do, which is community solar, which is a whole nother, kind of faction that says that you can actually, if you're a renter, you can get the bits of solar yourself. And that's a huge thing because, right, 50% of our home market here is renters, right? So there are initiatives going on across the United States, across the world that, you can participate in. And, again, I can, kind of point you to some of those things, but it's happening slowly but surely. I know we all see the bad and watch the news and, all that crap, but there are good things happening.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, that's beautiful to hear about the programs that are helping both the example that you gave in the Amazonian basin in Africa, as well as here in the U.S. with that to gain access, because one of the things of dealing with long-term expenses and inflation is if we can get if we can lock in those lower rates on electricity, this makes a lot of sense. Kimo, let's I know that we've come to the end of the time. I'd love to ask you a lot of other questions because you're obviously a true pioneer in this field and all that sort of stuff. Any summation thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, Kevin, again, it's just one entrepreneur to another. Just, get your vision, get your passion, get your team, do as Churchill said, don't quit.
Yeah, just keep on going.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, I appreciate you are an inspiration. It's always been great to know you as both as a colleague and a friend. I appreciate you taking the time out today and sharing a little bit of the inspiration as well as insight into your path. And I'd like to thank the individuals as well that asked us questions to kind of keep a little bit of interaction back and forth, both on the streaming sites and stuff like that. And obviously, we're still learning the best way to get feedback into the process. What I will say is that as we think Kimo with the statements, we'll make sure that we're monitoring on the LinkedIn, the YouTube, and then in our community site for the questions. And me and my team will actually make sure that we have those, and we'll give Kimo one point of entry, just so one of the things that used to happen is individual would get a lot of emails back and forth, and that's really hard, and it doesn't necessarily serve the community because more of you guys have questions. Obviously, I got to work on my voice too, and I'll do that before next time. But we'll make sure we do that. If you're not already aware, let me just I have one real quick commercial slide, and then I'll go to the slide that actually has the community area. Today's program was sponsored by the state of Chihuahua. We really appreciate the work that the state of Chihuahua is doing in building out economic integration between here in Central Texas to the state of Chihuahua and hosting projects that we've connected them with all the way to Japan and Austria before. If you're interested in being involved in the venture bridge that is being funded by the state of Chihuahua, please send an email to chihuahua@techranchaustin.com. That information is right there. If there's other questions you have, it's mentions here on the slide to send an email to EA. Just send it to Chihuahua. This way, my team will be able to, if your question resolves around any of the things we talked about today, and that you're interested in this program, please let us know. And I mentioned that I would invite you into the community. For those of you all that are not already in our community, you can go to techranch.com/connect. And at this site, there is a place where you can join into multiple different places inside of the Tech Ranch, whether as a mentor or in our community site or whatever. We will have typically the most detailed follow-up on all the different threads. Will actually end up being in the community site, although it will happen at our YouTube site as well as LinkedIn as well. If you have follow-up questions you'd like to ask Kimo, or you want to inquire a little bit deeper with us, whether it's here at or on one of the streaming sites that you saw this, let us know. And with that, we'll just wrap up for today. One of the things I appreciate is getting to be in a community of entrepreneurs that are acting as pioneers, taking advantage of all these disruptions that are happening in the world and building a better world with that. Once again, I greatly appreciate Kimo coming in and sharing his insight today. Thank you very much. You are an inspiration. It takes a bunch of pioneers to change the world for the better. So let's do exactly that. Let's go change the world for the better together. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.